Hello, I'm Melanie, a pediatric occupational therapist with Alberta Health Services. In the other videos in this series, you learned why people can have different reactions to the same sensation. One way to explain this is sensory thresholds. In this video, you'll learn what it may look like if your child has a lower or a higher threshold for a sensation. Understanding your child's thresholds for sensations can make it easier to understand why your child has certain sensory preferences. Sensory preferences are sensations your child likes, as well as the ones they struggle with. When you understand which sensation your child likes, seeks out, or needs, you can build those sensations into their day. By understanding what sensations they have more difficulty with, you can learn how to adjust the sensations or environment to support your child. Over time, your child can learn how to adjust sensations to support their own comfort and participation. First, a reminder about thresholds. A lower threshold for a sensation means it takes a small amount of the sensation for the brain to notice or respond to it. Another way to think about a lower threshold is having a lower tolerance for the sensation. A higher threshold for a sensation means it takes a lot of that sensation for the brain to notice or respond to it. Another way to think of a higher threshold is having a higher need for the sensation. Remember, the brain needs sensation. Sensation is fuel for the brain. In the other videos in this series, you learn to think of thresholds like cups. When your child's cup fills up, the threshold is triggered and their brain processes or responds to the sensation. For each of their senses, there will be a different threshold, and your child might respond differently if they have a lower or higher threshold for that sense. If your child has a lower threshold for visual input, they may be easily overwhelmed by busy, cluttered spaces and not know where to look. Too much color or bright lights may be overwhelming. They may prefer muted colors or limited items out in their space. When there's too much visual input for them, they may look away or try to block it out. If your child has a higher threshold for visual input, busier spaces may actually make it easier for them to focus. What others see as clutter isn't distracting for them. They may seek out bright lights, bright colors, or higher contrast. When an area has less visual input, they may struggle to stay focused. There isn't enough input for their brain. If your child has a lower threshold for auditory input, they may have strong responses to volume, to specific sounds, and struggle with background sounds. Having a lower threshold for auditory input doesn't mean your child won't like music or other sounds. It's just easier for them to get distracted or overwhelmed by sounds. If your child has a higher threshold for auditory input, it will take more input for them to respond. They may need sounds at a louder volume to notice, need background noise to help them focus, and when there isn't enough sound, they may even make their own without realizing it. A lower threshold for smell or olfactory input means your child notices odors easily, even faint ones. There will be odors or smells your child likes and ones they don't. If your child has a lower threshold for smells, it's easier for them to get overwhelmed by odors, and they may struggle to get used to them. A higher threshold for smell means your child may not notice smells or prefer strong smells. A lower threshold for taste may show up as your child noticing small changes in their food, like the flavor or the texture. Maybe they prefer foods that are more bland. They might be less adventurous when it comes to trying new foods. A child with a higher threshold for taste may seek out strong flavors, mix flavors, and enjoy unexpected flavor combinations. Touch is the biggest sense. When it comes to thresholds, you may notice your child can have different reactions to light touch, temperature, and deep pressure. If your child has a lower threshold for light touch, it can mean that they are very sensitive or reactive to light touch. Children who have a lower threshold for light touch may react strongly to everyday sensations. These are sensations like tags and seams in clothes, grooming activities like toothbrushing and hair care, and even forms of affection like holding hands or a pat on the head. Your child may have a lower tolerance for getting messy, sticky, or wet. Light touch is also known as protective touch. If your child has a lower tolerance or threshold for light touch, it's easier to trigger the protective fight, flight, or freeze response to light touch. If your child has a higher threshold for light touch, they may seek out this sensation by touching different textures, through messy play, or struggling to keep their hands to themselves. A higher threshold for light touch may mean that your child doesn't notice important sensations, like a mosquito landing on their leg and biting them. They might not notice their pants on backwards or sticky food all over their face. If your child has a lower threshold for temperature, they're probably more aware or sensitive to small changes in temperature. They may also have a small range of comfortable temperatures. For example, at bath time, it may be difficult to get the bath water just right. A higher threshold for temperature shows up as needing big changes in the temperature before they notice. You may need to help your child match clothing to temperature so they don't get too hot or too cold. For example, remind them to take off their coat when they come inside, since they may not notice they're overheating. Deep pressure is firmer touch. Many people find this type of touch calming and that it helps them focus. If your child has a lower threshold for deep pressure, they may feel like items are too heavy, like a quilt, or too tight, like a hug. Having a higher threshold for deep pressure can mean that your child seeks out frequent bear hugs, sits pressed up tight against you, or enjoys squeezing into small places. They may crash into things or appear to have a higher pain tolerance. They might not notice getting bruised, as bruises tend to be caused by deep pressure touch. It's not uncommon to have both a higher threshold for deep pressure and a lower threshold for light touch in the same person. Vestibular input is the sense of movement. If your child has a lower threshold for vestibular input, it means they're more sensitive to movement. They may not like activities like swinging or slides, or they may prefer these activities to be slower. On playgrounds, these children tend to appear cautious on moving equipment. Children who are very sensitive to vestibular input may experience motion sickness in a vehicle. If your child has a higher threshold for vestibular input, it may seem like they never stop moving. They tend to enjoy activities that swing, spin, start, and stop. You may find your child hanging off furniture and playground equipment with their head upside down, sideways, or in any other position they can get into. It may seem like they're constantly jumping, running, or spinning. It can feel exhausting just to watch them. Proprioceptive input is sensations from your joints and muscles. This is typically pushing and pulling input. Like deep pressure, many people find that this input is calming and helps them focus. Children with a higher threshold for proprioception may seek out this input by moving, hanging, pushing, pulling, jumping, and crashing. When proprioceptive input is combined with deep pressure, it's known as heavy work. Pushing or pulling a wagon, carrying a full backpack, or even crawling or jumping are all examples of heavy work. Combining these sensations gives input that is calming or grounding for most people. When trying to understand what type of threshold your child has for a sensation, think about how they react most of the time. Remember, There's a range of thresholds, and most people are somewhere in between low and high. Your child will have different thresholds for different sensations. Their thresholds are unique to them. There is nothing wrong with having a lower or a higher threshold. This just helps explain why your child might seek out or struggle with a sensation. Understanding your child's sensory thresholds helps you to understand their sensory preferences. Once you know the sensations your child seeks out or struggles with, you can help them by adjusting the input to match their needs. For more information about sensory processing, please visit ahs.ca/pedrehab for more resources. Thank you for watching.
Find information, support, and services for you and your child by clicking on the link in the description.